And regardless of what you do, you cannot change the structure of your skeleton, despite how these workouts are marketed. Team. Welcome back to another video in which I'm going to discuss some things that are probably relevant to the title of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed Monday's video, the TFNL Growth Guide video, in which I covered how to effectively train your back muscles. So hopefully that went down a treat and you managed to learn something from it. Today's video is a bit of a different one. It's one that has been actually on my list for a long time. It only really got re-brought up recently because I received a few comments on older videos that essentially kind of re-sparked this video idea. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of big creators, and the reason I've chosen these creators, in the realm of weightless workouts, they are very much the two big names that come to mind. And some of the messages being promoted, i.e. like altering skeletal structure and things along those lines, can be considered quite problematic, and that's something I want to address and maybe explain a bit about, which again probably explains the title of this video. But before we do so, we obviously need to do the bits and bobs that need to be done. If at any point you decide you like the video throughout this entire video, please let me know you like the video by liking the video, because obviously 1300 likes is the goal, and if we could reach that, I would very much appreciate it. But again, only like the video if you actually like the video. If at any point you agree with what I'm saying perhaps, or maybe even just fancy it, please do consider clicking the red button down below to subscribe to the channel, and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, then please do consider dropping it down below in the comment section for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. I'm also going to throw something out there very quickly, which again might not be necessary, but I'd rather be safe than sorry, is obviously I am going to be talking about some body image related things, and that could be seen as quite triggering for a lot of people, so I will throw a very quick trigger warning out there now. As I always say, if at any point you decide that you don't want to watch this video any further and say, you know what, it's not for me, then please do what's best for you and don't hesitate to click off the video, because realistically it's not worth giving a bit of you to me. You've got to prioritise yourself and your happiness, and consuming content that enhances your life. If for whatever reason this content negatively impacts your life, then it's not worth consuming. I may have made a bit of a mistake with the hat, I will be honest with you. I thought it was normal sized. I can assure you this is not normal sized, and I can assure you my head is nowhere near as big as this makes it look. I'm just going to throw it out there. We're obviously going to talk about Blogilates and Emi Wong, two creators I have covered previously, and two creators that are very well known for a lot of the workouts they produce, especially the ones that kind of revolve around either weightless workouts or workouts that imply you could maybe alter your skeletal structure, which is something I have spoken about, especially with Emi in the past. And essentially a weightless workout is kind of what it says on the tin. It is a body weight workout without any additional resistance beyond the resistance that your body is providing. And I know what you're thinking in a lot of cases, well Harry, there are some fantastic body weight movements out there, press ups, squats, things along those lines. I completely agree. I fully support that and actually fully get behind those movements as fantastic movements, because ultimately the resistance you're using is going to be your body weight, and due to the positioning of the body, like the press up for example or the squat, a lot of your body weight is going to be contributing to that resistance. But when you see movements like this for example, where not a lot of your body is moving because you're simply doing this, there is not a lot of additional resistance because not a lot of your body is providing that resistance. There's a big difference between how much resistance is going through your body when you do this versus when you do a press up or a squat. That being said, I do think that weightless workouts can certainly have a place actually, and can be effective for maybe slightly different things. I think ultimately, when you simply think about weightless movement, you may think about cardiovascular activity, so more aerobic movements such as running, etc, etc. You're probably in most cases not going to add additional resistance to that. You may do a mobility routine without resistance to essentially allow your body to move perhaps a bit more freely through its active range of motion, or perhaps you might add some very light resistance to it, but it's typically not something that would require a lot of additional resistance. Although the title probably says something along the lines of weightless workouts not working or something like that, the reality is they do work to an extent. And the reason why I kind of state that they don't work is ultimately because, as I've spoken about before, YouTube is a business. The more people that watch videos on YouTube, the more business that YouTube are going to make, therefore the more likely they are to push videos like mine. So obviously I have to kind of attract attention somehow, but also it's not actually wrong, but it's not actually right. They do work. until a point. The ceiling for progression is very low. If you've never done any exercise before and you may be very new to training, or perhaps worse, dealing with a medical condition or something along those lines, then movements like this could actually be a fairly, I would say, effective means of kind of dipping your toe into exercise, your kind of first step along your journey perhaps. When this is marketed towards people who are maybe a bit more established within the kind of realm of fitness, it's a bit more problematic because essentially they will only take you so far. And how far they will take you probably isn't as far as these creators might lead you to believe. The ceiling of progression is quite low. Let's say a goal of yours were to be building muscle, then you need to essentially progressively overload, which means progressively you must do more and more each week. Boom, 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 boom. If your goal is simply to burn more calories, then yeah, you will burn more calories moving than if you were stationary, but you can only burn so many calories moving so much. Therefore, to burn more calories, you would likely need to move more. And as you could tell, there is some movement here, certainly more movement than if you were stationary, but there's not a lot of movement. And the other thing to address is a lot of these workouts are often marketed incorrectly. What I mean by that is this workout, for example, is a 15-minute boob lift workout. Firm and lift your chest naturally. Movements like this being marketed, obviously, to work the pectoral region, so the chest, are probably not work in the chest as you might think, because essentially the kind of primary function of the pec muscle, so the chest here, is to bring your humerus, so this upper arm, across the body. And when you are lying flat on the floor, for example, hello, you can see me, if I do so, I'm bringing it across with some resistance, we'll say, because gravity is obviously working against the direction in which the arm is travelling. If I were to stand upright, like Emi is doing here, and kind of go like so, gravity is working with the upper arm here. So I'm not pulling against gravity, I'm actually pulling my arm towards gravity. So if I were to stand there like so and completely relax, I do that, thus showing that gravity is working, not necessarily my muscles. And I've noticed this before, so for example, I know one of the kind of things that Blogilates was almost known for to an extent was her weightless arm workouts where she would do arm flaps, where she would essentially go like this up and down. When we're thinking about arm muscles, we typically think of the biceps and the triceps. The biceps, primary function here, is elbow flexion. So bending that elbow. Triceps, typically we think about elbow extension, straightening that elbow. Movements like arm flaps, in which the elbow is not moving, don't really do as much for the biceps and triceps as you might think. And in actual fact, they do a lot more for the shoulders because you're obviously working against resistance and the shoulders are under a lot more tension, having to lift the arms up and maintain that position here. And despite what a lot of people do think, the shoulders and arms are separate parts. You've got the deltoids, being the shoulders, and the biceps and the triceps being part of the arms. And the other thing I kind of mentioned about these workouts being marketed incorrectly is when they almost promote or suggest skeletal change. And this video is actually the video I covered when I looked at Emi, I want to say about a year ago or so, when she speaks about exercise and stretch for shoulders and neck and the collarbone area. I know when she's referring to the collarbone area, that may be considered like the pectoral region. Reality is when you say collarbone, typically you think about the bone here, the collarbone, which is part of your skeleton. And regardless of what you do, you cannot change the structure of your skeleton, despite how these workouts are marketed. And I actually got a lot of comments on that video saying, oh, this worked for me, this definitely did change the structure of my collarbone. The reality is unfortunately, no, it did not. Because essentially, your skeleton is your skeleton. It is your bone, it is your structure, it is your frame. You cannot change that. And no, you cannot build on it, nor can you take away from it. The only change you'll really make to your skeleton is if you, unfortunately, break a bone. But what you can do is work surrounding muscles, because typically our skeleton is surrounded by so many different tissues. One of those tissues is muscle, so contractile tissue. So tissue that has the capacity to contract. So when you tense up, you're contracting. So when you work areas like the pectoral region, which we know is kind of split into 3 fiber divisions, think about costal being lower, sternal being middle, and clavicular fibers being the upper chest, and the clavicle is obviously your collarbone, hence clavicular fibers, meaning the fibers by your collarbone. So you can certainly develop muscles around those regions and around the kind of skeleton that you're almost being told can change, but the skeleton itself will not change. Some muscle groups are easier to work without weight than others. The chest, for example, can be worked more effectively without weight than perhaps like the biceps could be. Being on the knee won't necessarily change how the body is working because the pecs are not going through any different range of motion. All it will do is simply make it a bit easier for you, is almost like a progression to doing a press up on your feet. So you could start on both knees before progressing and make it harder by essentially transitioning over to being on your feet. It's just a shame that Emi will only place so much emphasis on movements that are actually pretty solid body weight movements, and in some cases replace them with less effective alternatives in which the target musculature isn't going through enough of a range of motion against the resistance of your body weight. And like I said earlier, it's typically easier to work certain muscles than others when thinking about weightless workouts. So I said the chest, you can do some effective movements, press ups and press up variations, fantastic. But the biceps, it's really hard to flex that elbow against the resistance of your body weight, because there are not many positions you can put yourself in without additional resistance that allow you to do so unless you have additional equipment, such as a bar to pull up on. And that's kind of indicated by Blogilates here when she's doing these weightless bicep curls. It takes minimal force to do this. Regardless of how much you squeeze those muscles and how hard you tense, it's not requiring a lot of energy or effort or muscular output to do this. Holding your arms in this position is probably actually going to tax your anterior delts, so the front of your shoulders, more than your biceps. But like I said, these weightless workouts can be a fantastic entry point to training, be that resistance training or just movement in general. The ceiling of progress is only going to be so high. So no, I'm not saying you need to go to a gym and you need to lift weights and you need to do this and this. Absolutely not. What I'm saying to you is that you can certainly start with workouts like this and you will likely see some results. But if you want to see even more results, potentially at some point you may need to consider increasing resistance through a means, be that resistance bands, be that some dumbbells you can buy for home, anything along those lines, just something that makes whatever you're doing a little bit more challenging, hence progressive overload. And it's a shame because a lot of people often comment on videos like this saying, oh, these movements really burn, they really hurt. Again, I said this many times, just because you're hurting it doesn't necessarily mean you're working it effectively. The example I typically say is I say, hold your bicep here and tense as hard as you can for as long as you can. That's really gonna hurt. Oh, I'm saying even now, after what, 3 seconds or something, well, I'm feeling a bit sore, it's almost crampy a bit. You do that for long enough, it's really gonna hurt. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's causing adaptation to occur. Nothing is changing and nothing is leading my body to say, actually, I need to do something to do this better. And that's a big issue that kind of floats around the realm of fitness, is that people base the effectiveness of a movement on how it feels. And sure, sensation can certainly play a part. Sensation is not everything, because I can choose a really ineffective movement. So if I've got 2 dumbbells in my hands and I did a standing chest fly like so with the dumbbells, biomechanically that is not going to be massively effective for the chest. If anything, it's going to be more anterior delt heavy because essentially I'm standing, gravity is not going in a favourable direction there. But if I squeeze the chest really hard, I can make it feel like it's a really good chest movement, when in reality a movement like the dumbbell press, for example, that I may not feel as much, is actually going to be a far better chest movement, because not only can I take the pecs through that active range of motion against adequate resistance, I can also lift a lot more, overload further, and take the target musculature closer to failure without other limiting factors such as my anterior delts jumping in. The main thing to acknowledge and to remember when you're working out is whatever you're doing help you achieve your goals? Can you remain consistent with what you're doing? And is it making you happy? If you can tick those 3 boxes, then I fully support what you're doing and I think you're on the right path. I could sit here for hours and explain why the ceiling of progression is going to be limited with these movements and why I think doing other things might be better. But if you don't enjoy the things that I'm recommending and the things that I think are potentially more optimal, then you're not going to stick to them. But if you enjoy workouts like this and you're seeing results that you're happy with from workouts like this, then that's really what matters. Because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're probably not going to stick to it. And if you don't stick to it, it's probably not going to help you achieve your goals, which in turn is probably not going to make you very happy. I want to address something very quickly that I have seen pop up quite a lot, and typically does pop up in my comment section or in my DMs after I create a video that speaks about weightless workouts, especially when I'm looking at individuals like Blogilates and Emi Wong. I had a lot of comments discussing Asian cultures and how many of them seem to prefer almost like these skeletal workouts and weightless workouts that individuals like Cassie are promoting, individuals like Emi Wong are promoting, stating that individuals who are maybe a bit more involved or interested in resistance training, who are looking to enhance the amount of muscle they had on their body, were actually oftentimes shamed by their friends and family for adopting a more muscular look. And I got countless messages after this, which actually really made me quite upset, where I would get messages from people who are living in these Asian cultures who would essentially say that they really want to get into resistance training, they really want to work out, but if they do so, their parents and their family will shame them for, in their words, looking like a man and looking no longer feminine. According to these DMs and comments, that has not been normalized in these cultures, and that led to a lot of body image concerns and anxieties that these individuals were messaging me about. But I fully acknowledge and I'm fully aware of the fact that as a British white man, these issues will never directly impact me. But these issues impact many of you, and I want to understand. I know it's all well and good me saying I think you should do this and this to overcome those concerns that you're having, but the reality is when you're raised in cultures that have very different beliefs to the beliefs you're perhaps viewing online, let's say through my videos and whatnot, it's not as easy as me just turning around saying, don't listen to them, do what's best for you, because in a lot of cases you're being shamed for that. And it is so unfortunate, and it's so sad to hear that that is a reality for many of you, and I do apologise. But all I can say is this: you must always try your best to pursue the things that make you happy and pursue the things that enhance your life. At the end of the day, cultural differences do exist, and I will never understand fully the cultural differences of another culture because I've not been exposed to those differences, because I think experience is one of the best teachers out there, and because of my lack of experience, like I said, I can never fully understand, but I can try. This is your life to live, and sadly, life is limited. It's not going to last forever, which is unfortunate, but what we can do with that information is say, you know what, I want to get from A to B in the best possible means. I want to be as happy as possible. I want to look how I want to look. I want to do what I want to do, and I want to be supported by people who support me. And that's all we can really do, is try and pursue the things that make us happy, pursue the look that you desire, with the hope that those around you who care about you will support you in those pursuits. Your body, your choice. If you want to look a certain way, it is your body, and because it is your body, you have the right to make it look the way you want it to look, because all of us have our own bodies. Who am I to say how you should look, and who are you to say how I should look? I should be in control of dictating how I want to look for me, and you should have that same control too. It's really about placing as much emphasis as possible on controlling our desires for us, without trying to reflect them or push them onto those around us, just because they don't necessarily align with our views. Again, I know it's not that simple. It's all too easy for a white man from England to sit here on YouTube talking to a camera and kind of preach about his beliefs and his opinions on how you should do what's best for you. Again, I do so in the idea of an ideal world where you would be able to do so, although I do fully acknowledge that in many cultures that won't be accepted, and I fully acknowledge that sometimes just because you want to look a certain way may not be enough of a reason for you to pursue that goal, because those who are around you, your family, may not support those endeavours, and the stress and anxiety and potential conflict that could cause between you and them, in your eyes, may not be worth pursuing those aesthetic goals you may have. What is the most important thing to you, and what will make you happiest? And if pursuing aesthetic desires makes you really happy, then I fully support it. But if pursuing those aesthetic desires that may not necessarily align with the cultures you're from causes a lot of conflict, tension and anxiety for you, then only you can answer whether you think it's worth it or not. In an ideal world, you would be able to do all the things that make you happy without fear of potential conflict and without fear of consequence from those around you. But just know that if you are struggling with anything body image related, or just anything mental health related, or just anything in general, you're always welcome to drop me a message. My DMs on Instagram are always open, and I really do encourage the conversation, because not only do I want to learn and understand, I want to try and help you and just maybe even be there for you to verbalise and vent to if you so wish. That is it. That is a video. And very quickly, I know I've probably rambled on for a lot longer than intended, we are going to quickly jump onto comment question of the week. Lately, I feel so sore after my workouts, especially my legs, which surprises me because I feel like I haven't changed my workout program so much and usually felt fine. Still a bit sore, but not that much. What can I do to help my muscles relax and repair the best, or should I change something? Essentially, this could be down to many things, but one of the big things I think people overlook when they do suddenly start getting quite sore from workouts could be potentially recovery. Maybe you're not recovering enough. Maybe something has changed in your diet where you're not eating enough. Maybe sleep has been impacted. You did mention that it's been really hot and horrible over summer here in England, which it has been quite spicy, I will say. Perhaps that could be impacting your sleep. Perhaps that could be impacting your recovery. Perhaps that could be impacting your performance. So I do feel like in a lot of cases this may be down to a recovery issue, and perhaps you maybe need to take a bit of a deload, because you guys ask yourself, when was the last time you took a deload? How many rest days do you have per week? Maybe take a few days where you reduce intensity and just do about 60% of what you would normally do, leaving plenty in the tank and not pushing it too close to failure. Allow your body to catch up, allow your body to recover, allow everything to replenish and repair, and then you can get back to it, and hopefully that soreness will alleviate. DOMS, so delayed onset of muscle soreness, isn't a bad thing, but sometimes excessive soreness can be related to lack of recovery. So that could be a consideration. That is it. That is the video. Like I said at the start of the video, if you like the video, please let me know you like the video by liking the video. 1,300 likes is the goal, so if we reach that, it'll be bloody splendid. I would very much appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below to subscribe to the channel, maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you too have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, please do consider dropping it down below in the comment section for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my, I would say, interesting looking headwear today, and thank you for tolerating the video.